Most people decide what kind of parent they're going to be for one of two reasons. Either they had amazing parents and they want to be just like them, or they had screwed up parents and they're determined to be nothing like them. Well, what if I told you neither one of those are good reasons to decide how you're going to parent? Because either way you're reacting, you're not intentionally deciding on who you want to be as a parent or how you want to raise your kids. This is the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast. And this isn't about parenting perfection. No, it's about parenting on purpose. We're going to dive deeply into how your childhood is still showing up in your parenting, how you are your parents' children, right? Whether you know it or not, whether you want it to be that way or not. We're going to talk about how important it is to keep the love in tough love. Because so many times people talk about they're going to have tough love, but it's just tough and there's no love, right? We're going to talk about what it's like to raise confident, emotionally healthy, physically healthy, and unshakable kids. We're going to talk about how to break generational curses and build generational wealth. We'll tackle the hard issues. We'll talk about the hard truths. And I'm not going to do this all by myself. I'm bringing in educators, psychologists, entrepreneurs, real parents who are doing the work and who will tell you what nobody else is saying out loud. We're going to have nutritionists. We're going to have medical doctors because we want to be our best selves and show our kids how to be their best selves. So let me give you a quick preview of some of the guests who have already committed to coming on the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast. I have a stay-at-home father who, with his wife, decided that he would stay home with the kids when they didn't want them in daycare. Non-traditional, but very effective, right? We'll talk to a set of parents who blended their families. He had 4 kids. She had 4 kids. And now together they are a family of 10. And listen, they just came back from a cross-country road trip. Okay, I'm dying to see what that was like. And we have a father who is training his kids to become elite athletes. How amazing is that, right? We're talking 4 a.m. mornings for kids, right? But kids who are committed to their own success. How do we get there? Now, this is one that I'm really excited about. We have a grief therapist who will be coming on the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast, not only to teach us how to help our kids who may be grieving with the loss of a loved one, but also how to help us handle it. Because we still have to show up as parents, even when we don't feel like it. And I remember when my dad passed away, and I didn't think it impacted my kids because they were 6 and 7 years old. And I never saw them cry. But then my son ended up writing about his grandfather in a school project. Then later, his behavior became unstable, right, in school. And then my daughter, when she had her first child, she named him after my dad. Now, my dad didn't have one of those normal names. My dad's name is Leophis. Okay, my dad was born in 1943. His name is Leophis. So y'all hear me talking about Sincere, my grandson, but Sincere's middle name is Leophis. Even though my daughter was 6 when he died, he held a place in her heart. I want to also talk about like my grandmother. When my grandmother passed away, she was my everything. I had a hard time showing up as a mom. I was going to work and coming home and laying in the bed, going to work, coming home, laying in the bed, right? And I called Kaiser trying to get some help. I was like, I need some help. And because at that time, I wasn't suicidal, they were like, hey, you don't qualify for our services. I hear they're better now. I hear they're better with providing services before you get to being suicidal. And I was never suicidal. But because I wasn't, they didn't allow me to have their therapy services. So we have a grief therapist who's going to come on the show and give us some strategies, not just for our kids, but for ourselves as adults. And I was sharing with a friend of mine whose mom passed away when he was 5 years old, and he's now in his 50s. And he said, I'm just now realizing I didn't grieve properly for my mom when she passed away. I was like, how long ago did she pass away? He said, when I was 5. Can you imagine holding on to that hurt for over 45 years and not knowing how to deal with it? Man, I'm grateful that he's getting what he needs now. But if we can help some people not have to wait 40 plus years to get the help that they need to be their best selves for themselves and their children, I got to give it to them. Right? Because the best time to have learned about that was back then, but the second best time is right now. Now, I know you like, those who don't know me are like, who in the world is this person? Because I didn't even introduce myself or say my name, but I am Kalisha Washington. I am your parenting BFF. I'm the mom of 2 adult children. And I gave birth to my kids when I was 18 when I had my son. I was 19 when I had my daughter, right? And you know, I've learned a lot. My kids are now 30 and 31 years old. I have 4 grandchildren. I have a 6-year-old grandson, a 2-year-old grandson, a 1-year-old granddaughter, and a 3-month-old grandson, all by my daughter, right? And they are my pride and joy. I love my grandbabies, right? But understand that I know that I screwed up as a parent. And we'll probably continue to screw up and make some bad decisions and need to get some advice from other people and hear another perspective. Because I also don't believe that parenting stops when the kids turn 18, even when they turn 30, even when they have children. You never stop being their parent. How you show up will change. The fact that you need to show up doesn't change. And even though I've screwed up and I've had to apologize for my kid to my kids numerous times, I've had to ask for their forgiveness. And I'll share some of those stories because I believe it's important to share when you know that you messed up so that those kids don't pass on that to the next generation. Because how many times have you heard people say stuff like, my mom did this with me and I turned out all right? Listen, the fact that you think you turned out all right is proof and evidence that you did not turn out all right, right? But while I've learned how to break some patterns and rebuild some relationships, I want to help other parents do the same. I want to share some tools, some mindset shifts, and build a community that we all wished that we had had a long time ago. Professionally, I've been a teacher, instructional coach, assistant principal, principal, professor, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot how to be a better parent in those environments, and I learned a lot working with other parents who had done it right and who had not done it right, right? But to get there, I spent a lot of time to get to being an educator. I spent a lot of time working and going to school, working and going to school. And I missed a lot of time with my children. And that time with my children is time I can never get back. And I thought because we had such a huge village, it didn't matter. We had my dad, my grandma, my brothers, my kid's dad, his mom, his aunt, his brothers, right? We had this huge family, but my kids needed me. And I wasn't there. And I wasn't out partying and I wasn't out, doing anything, that couldn't have been. I was working. I was going to school. I was starting a career so that I could create something for them. But what they really needed was my time. So let's talk about it. Here's the more difficult part. Here's one of those uncomfortable conversations. But being broke can screw up your kids just as much as bad parenting. I remember when all we had to eat was noodles piled with sodium. I remember getting the hot and ready pizzas. But I want to make sure that my grandkids never have to eat hot and ready. And they don't never have to eat oodles or noodles. I was thinking about a time when I remember one of my friends was on social media and she was talking about her daughter had gotten bit by a spider or something, had an infection in her foot. She had taken her to the local hospital. They airlifted her to Children's Hospital. And I commented in the chat and I was like, girl, you must have that good insurance. She said, I have cash. I said, excuse me. Different conversation, right? She had cash to have her child airlifted. Now, if she hadn't had that cash, her daughter would have probably been in the back of an ambulance taking the 14 freeway to the 5 freeway to the 405 to the 101. And if you're anywhere in or around Los Angeles, you know exactly what I mean. It could have been life and death because they were not going to airlift her on an IOU. And no Medicaid or anything like that was going to pay for her to get airlifted. They would have done the best they could with what they had in the back of that ambulance. But what if you don't have to choose between your kids' well being and being able to eat? Or what if you didn't have to be so time broke that you come home from work after working long hours or working multiple jobs and you're stressed out and you're stretched so thin that you have nothing left to give, that you have no time that you can spend or interact with your kids because you're passing out. You didn't even get to finish that glass of wine that was sitting next to the couch because you out. What if you didn't have to be financially broke? That you didn't have to worry about paying these bills on time and leaving those other ones until the pink notice came? What if you didn't have to pass down debt? I'll never forget when my mom died. I was 15 years old. And I remember creditors calling the house after she had passed away, asking to speak to her about this bill or that bill. And it reopened those wounds every single time. And I'm crying all over again. Let's not leave that legacy. Let's not leave that generational curse. Let's break that, throw it out. Let's do things differently. So, on this podcast, we will talk about money because this podcast is not just about raising better kids, it's about creating a better life for you and your family. And y'all know, one of the biggest game changers in my life was starting a home based business to now have the time to actually show up for my kids and my grandkids. To have my grandson just started first grade this past week, and guess who was right there taking pictures? Me. Last year I was at trunk or treat, I was at all the parent meetings, I was at all, he had projects where he had to build something and try it out, or like a little STEM project, and guess what, I picked him up from school, took him shopping to go get the materials and put the thing together and come back to school and try it out. And I was there to cheer him on as he got to show up for his school, being one of like 5 or 6 kids who actually mastered the experiment. But guess what? That's time that we'll never get back. It's time I didn't get to spend with my kids. I remember being at trunk or treat with my grandson, and it was me, my daughter, my 2 grandsons, my granddaughter, right, and my grand dog had on all. We all had on the same costume, and my daughter was there. She had decorated her trunk. I was there. I decorated my trunk, and my daughter goes, "You never did that with us." No, because I was at school with my students instead of my kids' school. That I can't do over, but I can do better from here on out. And I can help other people do better with themselves, right? My daughter, when she graduated from college, I was able to take her to England and pay all those expenses, right? And that was mother daughter time that we hadn't had previously, but we had it then. My grandson was in utero at the time, right? So she was throwing up the whole way there, the whole way back. I mean, it was rough, but we got to spend that time together, and those memories no one can ever take away from us. So if I can help some other people create those memories, create those relationships, repair some of those relationships, that's what I'm committed to spending my time doing. If you've ever wanted to travel more, earn more money, just be more present for your kids, stick around, because I'll be sharing with you how you can build a business, how you can create a legacy, how you can finally give your kids the version of you that they deserve so that you all can enjoy each other. Because the one thing we don't know is how much time we have left on this earth. And the struggle of my life has been having time and no money, or money and no time. I need to have time and money at the same time. And I need to help other people do the exact same thing. So listen, if you're ready to parent with purpose, if you're ready to break some cycles that need to be broken, if you're ready to repair some of those relationships that need to be repaired, if you're ready to build something real, go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and come with me on this journey, because this time we're not going to screw up our kids. Again, I am Kalisha Washington. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. The very first episode of the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast, and you don't want to miss this. Bye for now.